Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BrisScience for October 2016, proudly and enthusiastically presented by the University of Queensland, and I'm going to be your MC for this evening, Joel Gilmore. We're very excited to be here at The Edge tonight. Thank you all for coming out. The Edge have been our long-time partners, and hop on the website, check out the rest of the things they have on offer, some great creative arts, as well as the maker space downstairs. Really fantastic place to hang out, and they're open on the weekends and so forth as well. Tonight, we are going to be talking about what it means to be a successful athlete in the world of modern sport. We're going to be hearing first from a scientist, Robbie Wilson. Robbie Wilson, who's going to be talking about, not singing unfortunately, he's going to be talking about how athleticism contributes to success. And then we're going to hear from actual athlete Maddie Kini, not that I'm saying anything, Robbie, who was at Rio 2016 successfully, and she's going to be talking about what it means to be an athlete and to be an Olympian. So unfortunately, we were going to have Coach Hui Tong with us tonight, but unfortunately they've been called away at the last minute due to work. But I'm sure that Robbie and Maddie have more than enough to bring to the table this evening. After the presentations, we will be taking questions. You can either tweet your questions to us with hashtag BrisScience, or you can write them down on the lovely BrisScience paper you got on the way in, and we will, Leonie and Amy will collect those, and we'll get through as many of those questions as we can. And finally, we will have drinks and nibblies afterwards to continue the conversation. If I could ask you to put your phones on silent now, however, in preparation for the night. All right, so I would like to welcome, first of all, Associate Professor Robbie Wilson, who is from the University of Queensland's School of Biological Sciences. He researches a very broad range of things, but among them is how athleticism and skill balance to produce success in everyone from animals to soccer players, sometimes the combination of the two, and what that means for Olympics. So please join me in welcoming Robbie Wilson.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? The power of suggestion is brilliant there. I said, whatever you do, when you introduce me, don't introduce me as Robbie Williams. It worked perfectly. Okay, let's start off by talking about Roberto Baggio, personal favourite soccer player of mine. This particular kick in the World Cup final of 1994. All he has to do is score it to prevent Brazil from winning the World Cup. He lines it up. He's pretty nervous. He happens to be Italy's best player throughout the entire tournament. Scored most of their goals. Misses it. Poor old Roberto suffers from 2 years of a deep depression. Sport can be harsh sometimes, can't it? So we can mix that up and have a look at the alternative to that, which is, and I'm going to give some volume for this, Australia, wanting to get into the World Cup for the first time in 32 years.
Are you sure?
All as John Aloisi needs to do is score the penalty.
He wins it for us. John.
Here's Aloisi for a place in the World Cup.
For us.
He scored! Australia have done it!
Come on!
John Aloisi, the Confederations Cup.
Johnny scored. I cried. A lot of Australia cried. And that is possibly one of the best sporting moments of my life. Sport has its ups and downs. But let's compare the world of sport to the world of nature. Here's little Misty. Misty is a little gazelle who's decided to go for a little sojourn across the savannah and is just having a little bite to eat. And Misty does not notice that Cedric is in there. And Cedric pops up and decides to have a little game and chase Misty. Misty's got a couple of kids, a loving husband, but Misty is no more. Nature is much harsher than the world of sports. It's life or death. It's a game that is not really as light-hearted as sport, and we certainly do not have the gladiatorial bouts in sport as we once had. So what I am charged with today is to talk about the world of sports and nature, and to try and convince you that looking towards nature and understanding nature and the struggle between different organisms within and between species can offer us novel ways of developing Olympians. But let's go back to this young, beautiful, cute little child who happens to be me. Yes, very cute. Yes, by God, I had hair once. And back when I was much younger than now, I had a dream that I was going to be a superstar soccer player. My hero was Diego Maradona. Diego's still my hero, despite his indiscretions. But unfortunately, I found that I had to go with Plan B. Plan B was becoming a zoologist. And I found it's much easier for me becoming a zoologist than a superstar soccer player. Just missed out. Injuries, knee problems, that sort of thing. What I'm really fascinated as a zoologist is what makes organisms fantastic at physical tasks, whether it's a frog jumping, whether it's a fish swimming, whether it's an animal running. I'm interested in what creates elite success in the animal world. And this is applicable to all sorts of situations. You can look at crayfish that have to fight. What determines the winner there? Or predator-prey interactions. Who wins under those circumstances? Or we've got a bird here, a male bird trying to successfully attract a mate. What creates success in these worlds? And that's what I primarily study, but I apply this for lessons in human physical attributes as well, and when I'm applying them to elite athletes too. So we can apply these sorts of questions and the way that I study them to answer questions in conservation. Why is it that these introduced predators have totally nailed our fauna in Australia? Worst extinction record of any continent in the world for mammal fauna. Why is it that these species have gone extinct and others? By studying performance in nature, we can pursue these sorts of questions. But we can also apply them to understanding what it means to be an elite decathlete, which I've worked on before, or tennis players, or soccer players. These are the same situations for me. One, the metric of success is reproduction, and that's what you see in the natural world. The other is how much you earn, the notoriety, and to some degree reproductive success might have a role there as well. We won't discuss that any further. So, as I said, the brief today is talking about building the next Olympian generation. Can we use lessons from nature to be able to think about this? Or I like to think, how do we make Australia great again? Australia's tremendous, but it could be more tremendous, very, very tremendous. And so we could try to do that. But how do we make Australia great again? Firstly, is Australia that bad now? We've got an Olympic athlete here tonight, a bronze medalist. What an amazing achievement that is. How successful is Australia at the moment? Here is a figure. This puts Australia in perspective. On the x-axis here, we've got population size of a country. These are the top 20 countries in medal winners, in the last Olympics, and medals. What you can see here is that Australia is the dot there, signified. We are above that line. That means we are punching above our weight for a population size. We are doing damn well. Is it really the problem that the media is making out? What about if we compare it to gross domestic product? What about GDP? Well, for GDP, Madison, you might recognise someone there. We've got trillions of dollars, medals here. Australia falls right on the line. We're doing very well. Countries that have a similar GDP as us, we are outperforming. Is that such a problem after all? And here is one of the issues. If we compare our performance to the year 2000, look how far above the line we are. In any metric, we are outrageously successful. In the past, we have been so successful that we want it more. Being average, or being as expected, or being just above average is not good enough anymore, apparently. But here in 2000, incredible success then. Now, this is maybe a philosophical question about whether we really need to be so much better than we are today. I grew up in the 1980s, really, following sport. Born in the 70s, let's be honest. I grew up in a time when Duncan Armstrong won a gold medal in the 1988 Olympics. I'm sure quite a few of you remember Duncan Armstrong. That was a time when we didn't win that many gold medals. If an athlete won a gold medal, they would be a household name for a decade afterwards. That was our first introduction to Laurie Lawrence, the absolutely crazy man who was Duncan Armstrong's coach. Let me just play a short video. This is the time in which I was brought up. This is the last 100 metres of Duncan Armstrong's swim in the 1988 Olympics. Laurie Lawrence is on the sidelines watching.
Then across to Michael Gross. That's Biondi. Now, bear in mind, Armstrong had the fastest last lap in the heats yesterday. And this is looking enormous. Oh, I can't stand it. 30 metres out. Armstrong has hit the lead. Biondi is going. He's back over Holman. He can't hang on. Armstrong, Australia. Look at this here gold medal. Oh my God. Holman back. Come on. Go. And what a fantastic swim. The smartest swim I think I've ever seen anyone swim in the Olympics.
Mate, we just beat 3 world record holders. How do you think I feel? How do you think I feel?
Duncan Armstrong, world record time, 1:47.25.
Where's the animal? Where's the animal?
For his world record performance in the 200 metres freestyle.
Now that's how you celebrate Olympic success, without a doubt. So let's put aside the fact of whether we should be shooting for wanting more and more. Let's assume that we do want more. How do we become the best? Okay. How do we become better than we are right now? There's a few different possibilities. Firstly, we copy another very successful nation. Secondly, we go for a uniquely Australian approach. We forge our own path to success. Or the third option that I think has come to the fore very recently is you ignore all evidence at all and you just tell everyone you're absolutely tremendously successful. I call that the Trump approach. So let's just pretend we're not going to go for the Trump approach, okay? How do we get success from copying others? We have to outspend those other countries. We have to outspend them or we have to outgrow them. Unfortunately, our country is not in a great situation to be able to do either of those, certainly for similar-sized economies. We only have 23 million in this country. Outspending and outgrowing is probably not the way to do things. Again, I'll go back to the 80s. We forge our own path as a small nation. We go for innovation. If America wins a boat race, and it's just a boat race for 100 years running, what do? You get some person who's larger than life, has way more money than they have sense. They hire one of the most talented designers in history, and they put together a boat that does things that no other boat has done before. Ben Lexon designs a boat that can win the America's Cup and do something that they thought was impossible. Forging your own path means doing something different that no other nation can do. We need to play to Australia's strengths if we want to forge our path. What are our strengths then? Well, firstly, we have some of the best scientists in the world here. We have one of the best universities in the world. We can take advantage of these for developing innovation. Another one is we are sports obsessed. We have the will to try and become the world's best at sport. We have the patience to try to do that. And finally, we are multicultural. This means we have many races, many cultures, many attitudes that can be utilised in ways that are a huge advantage to us. Let's think about that for a moment, the multicultural advantage, which really hasn't been thought of in the ways that it should be. Success in sports comes down to a combination of your attributes, what you're given when you're born, and the way you utilise those throughout life. The way you train, your attitude, the way your body responds to that training. Training is working with what you are given genetically. That means success in sports is always a combination of your genetics and your environment. A combination of genes plus environment. So, does that mean I could have been a dedicated athlete and got Rio gold? Well, probably not, unless I was an equestrian, because I'm far too old for the 2016 Olympics. But maybe I could have been, but certainly not in sports such as high jump, long jump, basketball. Clearly my genetics are not built for certain sports. The advantages of multicultural Australia is that we have a whole range of genetics, which means that we have the opportunities in a lot more different shapes and sizes and muscle types and bone structures that offers a lot more sports. Multicultural society should be thought of greater genetic diversity that can be utilised through our training structures. This is to show the power of genetics here. This is my beautiful daughter, who clearly has shown that she can improve on the past. Just have an appreciation of this photo here. These are all elite athletes. Look at the huge range of size and shape varieties there. Multicultural Australia provides us with much greater variety in size and shape that can be taken to our advantage. This size and shape is ideal for long distance running. This size and shape is ideal for sprinting. You get the point. So if we've got sports obsessed nation, we've got multiculturalism, how do we use science? Well, in the past, we've actually used science to forge a pathway that has been more successful than any other sport or Olympic machine, and that is the Australian Institute of Sports. The Australian Institute of Sports has really been the gold standard for developing Olympic talent. How did they do it in the past? Well, they would work with identifying talent, as simple as measuring the length of the limbs, the size, the shape of thousands of individuals, running them through a whole battery of tests. And this is identifying what an individual person would be best aligned with in terms of a sport. And then once they're aligned, then they can work on improving those. Because these sorts of measures are very easy to record, measure over again, then you can work on improving the coaching of those. A very successful model for developing talent, especially for power and endurance sports. So successful that these are our best sports. 188 medals for swimming, 73 in the past for athletics, 51 for rowing, and 40 for cycling. We've done incredibly well with the Australian Institute of Sports for these types of power and endurance sports. But you know what? Team Great Britain have outcopied us. They have replicated our system. They have taken many of our coaches and they have outdone us by spending more and by having a larger population base. Have a look at our performance in the last Olympics across our 4 main providers. Great Britain outdid us in athletics, cycling, rowing, but not surprisingly, we still did very well in swimming. Great Britain have done a beautifully successful job of replicating our system and outdoing us. How do we fight back? We need to innovate again. Now, their strength is also their weakness. They are copying. They are replicating our system. They are not innovating. The innovation should be our responsibility. That's the way we should be moving forward. How do we move forward? Well, the innovation should go into those sports where we've been largely unsuccessful in the past because they're so complicated. Certain sports are very difficult or have had very limited success in development in institutes of sports purely for that reason. They're very complex. They're not just reliant on power and endurance and speed, but also technique and skill and also strategy. Working within this system is possible. Team sports are astronomically more difficult to be able to study. Just to give you an idea of how talent ID and development struggles in the world of these more complex sports, let's just turn to soccer for a moment. Soccer is one of those sports. There's more than one way to reach success. Yet, here we have one of the most successful soccer players ever, Lionel Messi. Anyone surely could have seen this young boy and recognised such talent. But the Argentinian club that owned his services sold him to Barcelona at the age of 15 because they didn't think it was worthwhile the investment in a $1,000 fee per month in medical bills. They got rid of him. Here's Paul Pogba. Okay, Paul Pogba left Manchester United and moved to Juventus 3 years ago. They sold him for £2 million. He just moved back in the European summer and was bought back by the same club for £89 million. This is one of the richest sports in the world with talent ID agents everywhere, and they made an £87 million blunder when he was already an adult. Have a look at these data. These are data that can be replicated across every type of sport. This is just data taken from the Under-17s World Cup. All the participants at the Under-17 World Cup. This is the number of players on the y-axis, and this is the month in which those players were born. You find that a huge number of individuals are born at the beginning of the year. Why is that the case? It's because they're more developed, they're larger, and they look better when they're being watched by talent agents. They're selecting on what is the best attribute now rather than in the future. And that's what happens. You're losing all of this talent here. Only a few players are getting selected right at the end there of the year. Just that effect alone, and there's been very little work being done to improve that fact. I worked at an academy in the UK where more than 80% of the players were born in the first 4 months of the year. I said there might be a problem with your selection policies. They didn't change a thing. Okay, so how do we go about developing methods for improving our selection and development for complex sports? Well, I say that we can borrow from nature. The best strategies that organisms use in the wild have been favoured over millions of generations. Why? Because if they're not good strategies, they don't get to breed and they're out of the gene pool. So looking to what animals do and the strategies they employ and the way that biologists study organisms in the natural environment can offer a really unique and innovative way to study success. Okay? There is no difference between a sex-crazed marsupial and David Beckham. The metric of success is reproduction. The metric of success is money and trophies earned. It's all reliant on their physical attributes. All reliant. Let me work through an example. This is one of the species that my lab group studies, the northern quoll. Fascinating animal. It's endangered. It used to be found across all parts of the northern Australia, very common, but now not so common across mainland Australia. Now, we study it on a little island off the northeast side of the Northern Territory, Groot Island, where they're very common. There's not many predators there, there's not many cane toads, there's no cane toads, and they do well. What's fascinating about these quolls is that the males only live 1 year. The females a couple of years. This is their size around about this time of year. Beautiful, cute. By June the next year, this is what they look like. Beautiful animals ready to mate. Okay. Now, what happens during the mating season to these males? Okay. This is a little trace. This is a GPS device put on a female northern quoll for a week. This is about 1 mile by about 1 mile. They're running around in a small area, the females. Another female, the same thing. Here's a male. Here's another male. This male has decided in his wisdom to go into the middle part of the island, check out a really good cranking nightclub. It ain't going, so he's gone back that night. This is where he's walked a female on the beach. So the males, for 2 weeks, they don't eat much. They run around and do a marathon every night. And they basically disintegrate. They start to have an affliction that I call male pattern baldness, okay? They have some awful cysts. They can get gangrenous testicles. It really is awful what happens to these beautiful males over 2 weeks, and then they die. What a fascinating life history. Now, what makes a successful male in that sort of situation? Asking those questions is very similar to asking what makes success in a complex sport. Okay? We can actually measure the bite strength of these animals. We can run them through decathlons, if you like. We can measure how quickly they can run. We can measure how quickly they accelerate. We can measure how strong they are in their upper body strength. Let's go back one. We can measure how good they are running up poles, which take incredible motor skill. We can see how good they are at leaping up. They essentially can run up walls. They're incredible animals. We can see how good they are running around corners. We can see what determines their success and use complex analyses that are not usually used in standard sports science to address these questions, and we can apply them in sporting contexts. So there are different ways for success for a northern quoll. Small males, they may be very good at being agile, fast and skillful. Large males may be powerful and may be able to run long distances. Why would you want to be a small male? Because you're more likely to make it through to the breeding season. If you get there, you may get a few mates here or there and a few offspring. If you're a big male, you're unlikely to get through to the breeding season. But if you do get through, then there's a bountiful supply of mates then. There are trade-offs, multiple ways to success, and we can apply these methods in sport. Can we apply these to complex sports like soccer? Well, we would expect that there are a range of attributes that would be ideal if you were a forward like Lionel Messi, or there are a range of attributes that may be successful if you're an elite defender. By using our analyses, we can approach these sorts of questions. And that's what we've done. What determines a great player? We can look at all of these different traits and try to determine what makes success. Here we've done a lot of analyses on comparing skill and athletic ability. What I found when I started doing this sort of approach was that more than 90% of studies that look at what determines success in soccer, or the sports science that gets done in soccer, is all about what builds the athlete, how speed, strength, stamina. Almost no studies look at their skill. When I watch a game of soccer, it's what they do with the ball, but no one's studying that. So not surprisingly, when we studied it, we found that the most important determinants of success were skill. We can use our biological analyses to be able to pursue questions in not only in nature, but in sporting contexts as well. We can identify the best training regimes as well for these sorts of situations. Okay, we can use math in different ways as well. We can use math to predict what the best strategies should be. Let's go back again to nature. Let me tell you the beautiful story of the dung fly. The dung fly may not have the most beautiful reputation or name in the world, but the male dung fly will sit on a pat of beauty for a while and try to attract a female, or will look around for a nice juicy pat where a female might be. And what they're hoping to do is that they're going to be selected as an attractive male, and then the female will mate. So the question is, an important strategy for this male will be, how long should a dung fly mate for? Now, I'm sure this dung fly is not doing some incredible math in its mind, but over millions of generations, its strategy has been honed by natural selection. The individuals that get it wrong leave the gene pool. The individuals that get it right don't. So we can use math to try and predict what is the best strategy for an organism that's as simple as a dung fly. And it's very, very simple to calculate these sorts of things. All we need to know is how long they copulate for, how long they mate with the female, and how that affects the number of eggs he probably fertilizes. So the longer he mates for, the fewer extra eggs that he gets to fertilize. Now, does he give up then, or when should he give up? When should he go to another patch to find another female? Well, it's going to depend on how long it takes to find another female. So if the time it takes to find another female is about 160 minutes, then the prediction from math is he should mate for about 41 minutes. Using this simple math, we predict that a dung fly can mate for 41 minutes. What we find is that they mate for about 39 minutes. So we are predicting complex biological behaviours with this sort of mathematical approaches. Can we use similar sort of approaches to improve strategies in sport. And that's what we've been trying to do lately. So when I see that's not necessary. When I see this sort of chase, I see no difference to this sort of chase. How fast should an athlete run away from someone or something trying to capture it? What is going to affect this sort of behaviour? I'll tell you what's going to affect it. Things like speed versus accuracy. Now, this is my esteemed colleague, Mike Angeletta, who is in the audience from Arizona today, and he's showing that when he starts to move a little faster, that his accuracy of foot placement is compromised. I thought that maybe that was because he's not the fittest person in the world. Let's try his son instead to try and check it out. And we find that it's a similar sort of thing. Speed has a cost. Now, if you want to work out how fast you want to run away from an organism chasing you, then yes, you want to run as fast as possible, but not if it's going to compromise the accuracy of your foot placement, and certainly not your agility as well. Here's some movements from a northern quoll going through. Slowing down to get round a corner, easy. That's great. What happens if you go too fast? I must say, they're rather robust animals, okay? So in all types of human movements, there is this trade-off between speed and agility, speed and accuracy, power and accuracy. And this underlies so much sporting behaviour that we can start to develop ways of working out what the optimal strategy is. We've done it now with serving in tennis players. Here's Roger Federer, beautiful serve, but even Roger Federer gets more inaccurate the faster he serves. But we can work out exactly how fast he should be serving. I've worked with a biologist from Griffith University who looked at how serve speed affects the probability that a serve lands in. And then how serve speed affects when the ball lands in, the probability of winning. And you take those together, and that is the probability of winning the point. So we can predict how fast tennis players should be serving to maximise the points that they win. And using our model, we predict that tennis players should serve at about 92% of their max on the first serve, about 75% on their second serve, and when we compare it with the data that we got, there's a really close match. Why do they serve faster on the first serve? The only way they can lose a point on the first serve is if they land it in. That means if you're going to land it in on the first serve, make sure it's fast. Don't give an easy one on the first serve. That's why you should be serving fast. We can then take that and individualise those predictions so that we can predict how each player, and here is a whole heap of different elite players who played in the Australian Open a few years ago, how they could improve their success on serving if they served closer towards their optimal that we calculated. Okay. Even Federer can improve slightly. Wawrinka can improve 3%. 3% may not sound a lot, but I suspect 3% improvement to Maddie would actually make a huge difference. Those are the sorts of differences that matter to elite athletes. Unfortunately, Bernard Tomic can't improve at all on his serve. No comment there. We can make the same sort of approach, and we're doing it with optimal kicking strategy in soccer. This is a game between the kicker and the goalkeeper. The decision that the kicker has to make is, where should I aim? How hard should I kick? Should I try to fool the goalkeeper? And the keeper is trying to decide, when should I dive and where should I dive? Now, based on the interactions of the harder you kick it, the more inaccurate you are, then you can start to predict where players should best kick a penalty. And we're doing this work, so here's some of our predictions where target is distance from the post, there's the speed in which they're kicking and the probability of scoring. So we're starting to make these sorts of predictions. And this is done in collaboration with my PhD student, who's the style master, Andrew Hunter, Mike Angeletta, who's the uncoordinated guy in the last video, who's patting his cat. He looks a little bit evil there, doesn't he? And Ted Pavlich, who is the smart one amongst us all, and he's from ASU. And they're all in the audience here tonight. So if you want to talk to anyone about taking penalties, you can seek out these guys. So just to summarise, each of our medals cost the Australian public around about $12 million. Okay. Now, I say, comparison with a lot of things, that's a good investment. It makes Australia a healthy country in so many different ways. There are lots of spin-offs towards this. But I also say that we can use science to decrease the cost per medal and increase the number of medals. But we need to do this by innovation, not by replication. Not by replicating others, but having an innovative approach. So if we do the research that I'm talking about here, fundamental research that looks at physical performance attributes and what affects success in the wild and in individuals, then there are so many benefits that you can get. You can get a real innovation hub for science in Australia. There are benefits for health of our population. We can have conservation benefits as well as also spin-off benefits for athletic development. I think these sorts of new institutes of sports should be based on the types of models that are very successful for developing cancer treatments in the US. The US cancer centres are phenomenal, and they are successful because they combine practitioners and teachers and students. And I think the same sort of approach should be used for the new version of the Australian Institute of Sport. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me today. Now is the opportunity to actually hear from a real Olympian who actually realised their dreams and what it takes to be able to do that. And I'd like to hand over to Maddie now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Robbie Williams. Hi, everybody. My name's Madison Kini. I'm not James Bond, actually. I'm a diver, obviously, and I was at the Rio Olympics where I won a bronze medal, which is a dream come true for me. Thanks. I'm 20 years old, and I also I study currently at the University of Queensland. I do a Bachelor of Science, major of Physics, and I've been diving for about 10 years now, which is half my life, and it's been quite a long time, and there's been a lot of work behind the scenes in getting to my medal. And so a bit about myself. I was born in New Zealand, actually, but I'm Australian, I can assure you. And I moved to Perth when I was 4 years old, and then at the beginning of 2014, when I was 17 years old, I moved to Brisbane so I could train at the AIS, which the diving AIS is based in Brisbane. And for me, that's been the best move because even though I had to sacrifice a lot, I've been able to achieve things that I wasn't able to do in Perth. I've always been a really sporty person. Like in primary school, I was the sporty girl and always picked first on teams, but I did a lot of sports apart from diving when I first began. I did basketball and athletics, but not gymnastics, which is what most divers start off doing. And I think in about 2010, I first began to take diving more seriously when I was accepted into the high performance program. And then I had to stop doing my other sports so I could focus on doing diving. And I remember around those times when I was first becoming a professional diver, when we'd sit in our group psychology sessions and they'd ask you, what are your goals? What do you want to do? What are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? And like you write, yeah, I want to be an Olympian. My dream is to get an Olympic medal. So on the top of your little stairway, you do, Olympic gold medalist. And yeah, like there's always a dream back then, but like there's a lot of processes in between and you don't quite believe that you can get there when you're that young. Like, yeah, it's a big dream, but it can actually come true. And in 2012, I didn't even make the Olympic trials. Like I just wasn't good enough in 2012 at all. In 2013, I made my first senior international team where I competed at the World Championships. And in 2014, I made my first individual team at the World Cup for 3 metre and 3 metre synchro, where I was then first partnered with my synchro partner at the Olympic Games, Annabelle Smith. And it was at that at World Cup where we first won our first international medal. We got a bronze there. And yeah, like in terms of experiences, I'm only 20 years old. I feel quite old in the diving world, even though I'm actually really young. I was the second youngest individual competitor at the Rio Olympic Games in my event. And it really makes me think about the question. Like, this is my first Olympic Games, but I compete against people that have been to two or three Olympic Games, really. And so I asked myself, how can I compete with these Olympians at the Olympic Games when I'm not even an Olympian myself? And that leads me to say, what does it mean to be an Olympian? Like, being an Olympian, like, it's a dream come true, really. But it's also a lifetime commitment, and it's also a gamble that you have to take when you're really young. I've been diving for 10 years, and my results from the fruits of my labor, really. It's accumulation of sacrifices that you've had to make. During high school, you can't go out with your friends because you're always training. So they say, let's go shops. And I say, sorry, I'm training, I can't do anything, sorry. And they understand, but they really want you to, they really miss you when they go. Well, I hope. And with school as well, like, I probably went to about 60% of high school because I was away or I leave school early to go to training. And so my grades are not as high as I want them to be, obviously, because I just miss so much school, I just can't keep up. And also moving away from home. I moved away from home when I was 17. My parents and my family still live in Perth, and that was a big sacrifice to me. It was a really hard move because I left everything behind, really. I threw it all away to come to Brisbane and give it my best shot at making the Olympic Games, and it's paid off, really. But what about the people that don't? Like, I know people that can make bigger sacrifices than I do and that train harder than I do, but some of these people, they don't make the Olympic Games, they don't make the teams that I do. But so what sets them apart from me? And that's what my second question's about, is what do I think it means to create an Olympian? I don't think there's a specific formula. Obviously, as Robbie mentioned earlier, there's different types of people that do different sports, and different people are suited to different sports as well. But I believe that Olympians and athletes are set apart from other people. They're just naturally gifted. And when I was younger, probably around 2013, I never believed it when people told me that being an athlete was 30% physical and 70% mental. as I rose through the ranks in diving, I found out that the hard way. In 2014 at the Commonwealth Games, I wanted to win a gold medal, and I believed that I could win a gold medal, and everyone expected me to win, and I put so much pressure on myself that I couldn't handle it, and I faltered in the final, and I got a silver, which is still good, but it wasn't at my expectation. And that was hard because I thought, I've done everything, I can just muscle my way through it, I don't need anyone else's support or anything like that, but I faltered. And in 2015, we had a lot of World Series competitions, and a couple of times I also, just the pressure of the high-level competition, I balked on some dives, and I missed some good results, and that was really hard for me as well. And at the World Championships in 2015, there was a viral video of me. It was in the final of the 1 meter springboard, and it was one of my best events, and I fell off. I just jumped off, and I got a failed dive, and then my video went viral, and it was called "The Worst Dive in History." And 2 million views. The worst dive. I've done worse dives than that in training. I've done belly flops, and I've done back flops and all that, but this dive, the worst dive in history. And that took its toll a little bit. Like, just being called the worst dive, and you come into a competition with the expectation on yourself that you can win. Like, I'm really good, but I can win, but you're just mentally not there. And through all these experiences, that I learnt a lot about myself. One of my favorite quotes is, "The master has failed more times than the novice has tried." And I think through all these failures that I've had, balking, I've learnt a lot about myself. And yeah, each test and each failure, it caused me to understand myself and how I can deal with these different situations so that in the future, these situations can't happen to me. And I think that in the last 2 years, through my failures, I've learned more about myself than I have in the past 7 or 8 years of just being at like a low level. I have like not going through any hard times, not going through any struggles. I've definitely grown more as a person in the past 2 years. And I don't think that I would have been able to be successful at the Olympic Games if it wasn't for all my failures. Speaking about the Olympic Games, there's nothing that can prepare you for that. It's just, you think that you're ready, and then you just stand there, and it's such a big stage. Everyone's eyes are on you, and it's nothing like you could ever imagine before. And even just thinking back to it now, I just thought, this just doesn't feel like the Olympic Games. Like, it was just, everything's so intense. And I think because I've been able to learn and understand myself, I learned how to adapt to different situations. The me from 2 years ago would have crumbled under the pressure of being on that board and trying to dive and do my best. Because when you're on that board at the Olympic Games, it's not just the training that you've done recently, it's everything in your whole life that you've given up leading to that moment. You've sacrificed so many things in just for this one moment, to have a shot at success. And that's like the real pressure. Not winning, but like, this is everything I've given it for. I don't want to waste anything. And so, because I knew I've learned a lot about myself, I was able to adapt to the situation. I was able to stay calm, and I was able to succeed for one of the first times in my life, and not have the media write bad things about me being the worst diver in the world. So that's why I now understand the 30% physical and 70% mental. It really is true. Because I don't think if you're a perfect athlete, you've got the perfect body. If you don't have the right mindset, you can't succeed. And as Robbie was saying, I believe that physical talent and hard work is what you can do to succeed, really. I know people that are wonderfully talented divers that I used to train with that I thought, wow, these guys are amazing. But they just didn't have the hard work or the hard ethic or the work ethic. And they just, in my eyes, they just threw away what could be an amazing career in diving. But that wasn't for them, obviously, and that's their choice. But I think you can't just get by on natural talent alone. And for me personally, I can jump very high. I'm naturally gifted, and even though I'm not the most technically beautiful diver, I'm able to do harder dives than other people. And so in that way, I'm able to compensate for my weaknesses. And so I train my strengths. My coach is not here tonight, unfortunately, and I have to thank him for absolutely everything, because without him supporting me through all my tough times and pushing me hard, doing cardio, doing gym, in the pool, like, you just need the support behind you to be able to do everything. So I think to create an Olympian, you need to be a master of the mind and master of the body. You need to be able to accept failure, and you need to be able to understand yourself. And I think that's the key to success. That's been the key to my success. I'm not perfect, obviously, and I know unfortunately, I have a long way to go, but it's just the last couple of years has been an incredible journey for me, and I couldn't have done it without people supporting me and without me changing my mindset, because without change, you can't improve. And that's about it from me. Thank you for listening.
Right, so I might invite you to actually stay on stage and for Robbie to come up and join us. We will get into some questions. So if you have questions for either Robbie or Maddie, please write them down or tweet them. We've already got a couple come out, and we'll come around and collect those. Thank you very much. Just wave them into the air. Before we dive into the questions, just wanted to let you know about next month's Thank you, I'm here all week. Next month's BrisScience, which is celebrating 80 years of veterinary science in Australia. So we're going to be hearing from a range of experts on vet science, looking at the health and welfare of our animals, how we can get our pets to live longer, happier and healthier lives, although I don't think that involves forcing them to run around corners at high speed. Sorry, Robbie, it might not be that sort of talk. All right, so we have some questions. Yes, please do. You do. That's a great question. You do both get microphones.
SingStar.
I think they're both on. Yes.
Testing.
Yes, great.
Yes,
good.
yes, it's
Fantastic. That's good. Okay, so first question. I'm just going to go to Twitter because.
Or me.
Sorry.
Well, don't I get a first question?
Oh, so you want to act? That wasn't your question. Sorry. Right, please go. I thought that.
Maddie, I think this is the most important question so far, which is, were you actually really jumping into green, smelly water?
It's true. It was like a swamp, to be honest. They accidentally put bleach into the pool instead of chlorine, and so killed all the chlorine, and the pool went green, and you couldn't even see the bottom. It was not good.
So did some athletes, do you think, mentally suffer from that?
Yeah, like, of course, it's, as I was saying before, it's all about being adaptable. Like, you can't control the situation, you've just got to make the best of it. And everyone's under the same conditions. It's not like one person's being disadvantaged, but it's just about how you're able to handle the different situations.
Yeah, no, great question. All right. So first question is from Roundy Round on Twitter. Can genetics offer an insight for an elite athlete who scouts these children or teens for the opportunity to become athletes? Is there opportunity for genetic testing, I guess?
Ooh, that's yes is the short answer. But then there's also a lot of moral questions associated with that. But if you're asking purely from a scientific perspective, it is possible, and we could probably do it now. The technology's available.
And so a follow-up question here, I guess, is should Australia do skill screening for sport when in primary schools to maximise the number of athletes in the future?
Yes.
And maybe it follow. So, I mean, Maddie, you mentioned that you obviously got into this very early. How do parents decide, or did you sort of decide early on that this was something you were really into? Like, how do you make that decision if it's a long commitment?
I can't even remember. Because I did multiple sports when I was younger, and with diving, it just got to the point where I couldn't continue with any other sports because of my commitments to diving. And it's not like I was a world champion back when I was 13 years old. I was still just at the Australian level, but it was something I love, and I still do love diving. But yeah, I just stuck with it, and it was my sport.
Yeah. Okay. I have a comment here, also from Twitter, from Ted Pavlik, and also a comment here saying that Malcolm Gladwell has pointed out a birth year trend in choosing youth sports people. Suggests an effect across youth sports. Can you comment?
Ted, can you explain that a bit further? Yeah, so I suppose
I might just get you to paraphrase the question just for anyone who couldn't hear that.
Yeah, so what Ted was saying was that Malcolm Gladwell pointed out that it's not just the scouts that are selecting individuals that are born earlier in the year for sports and giving them more opportunity, that it happens way earlier than that, parents and coaches earlier on. And I can only just agree with that statement. I think there just needs to be a means of making sure that young athletes get equal opportunity earlier on, and then they take into consideration that some individuals are going to grow faster than others, and that in order to make selections for representative teams, they should take that into consideration and think about the sort of attributes that they want in the future, rather than selecting for what the best player is now. So I think the philosophical difference is finding out what predicts success as an adult athlete, and then trying to work out what are the best predictors there, because what we're getting clouded with is individuals are growing at different rates. And in sports, and American football would be the same sort of thing, but in sports like rugby league and rugby union, individuals that grow much faster earlier on get so many more advantages purely because they're large. Okay, you can hold the ball and you can run through an entire team. I think you should think about those sorts of advantages and select upon them in a more meaningful way.
With diving, when does sort of the age start to become an advantage or a disadvantage over time? What's the peak?
It depends, really. A lot of the Chinese divers are quite young, but the Chinese divers are usually pretty good from anywhere from 16 up until 30 because they're just amazing. But for divers in general, it's usually from around age 18 to age 30 is the prime age. But we've got some divers that are 35 even, and they're considered dinosaurs in the diving pool. But they should just retire already, seriously. No, I'm just kidding.
So you're telling me I've still got a chance?
Maybe.
And you wouldn't need a bathing cap. It'd be,
everyone gets the boot in, don't they?
Yeah. I'm doing pretty well up here so far myself. But, and I have the last question, or maybe not last question, but we have a question here just more broadly, and I'm interested in your thoughts, is it fair to judge sports persons by their behaviour away from sport? I don't know whether...
Yes.
No. I just wanted to disagree.
That's good, a nice little bit of controversy there. Well, look, we definitely have some opportunity for more questions over drinks and nibblies afterwards. You want questions, or if you want to get an autograph from Robbie.
Robbie Williams, everybody.
Yeah, that's right. He'll sign whatever you want. Or indeed from Maddie, who has obviously many years left to continue to impress us at future Olympics. So could you please thank both of them coming out tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you back. Thank you very much. And we have some small thank yous from the University of Queensland.